Okay, joining us is Shawn Buchanan, Vice President and General Manager of Graycor Southern, based outside of Atlanta in Kennesaw, Georgia. Shawn, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Shawn, so much has changed since mid-March. I felt like the commercial construction market and construction in general is largely humming along in the US and much of the world before the COVID-19 outbreak. Now we're hearing from AGC that nearly 2/3 of contractors are seeing future projects postponed or canceled. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, as the nation sort of inches its way back to business as usual or the normal, what's going to happen with these delayed capital projects? You bring up an interesting point, which is it's now time to sort of reevaluate the benchmarks and metrics that went into assessing the viability of those projects to begin with. I'd love to have you just kind of talk about how your firm is handling working with your clients on these delayed or postponed projects.
Absolutely. I guess the first comment would be I'm not so sure that business as usual is going to be that going forward. I think it's going to be kind of a new normal. Obviously, the country moves in certain directions in general, and events like this tend to accelerate different changes in the way the general populace goes about their business. And I think really that's kind of where for projects that were in the pipeline or were in the middle of construction, that's kind of where clients have to start is, does the commercial viability of the project even make sense in light of where the country's kind of moved? I think that's especially true on the commercial side, where you've got retail, entertainment that have been significantly disrupted via COVID. And I think there's still some doubt as to coming out of this, what that looks like. I mean, just seeing the resurgent movies, things like that, and people not really jumping right back into movie theaters, I think is a good indicator that it's going to be a while.
You also mentioned vendors. So you're talking about this is the building team, the project team, and are those firms still viable? The communication between the project members. What are you hearing? What are you guys seeing among your current projects? Are the other sort of project team members still around and communicating and ready to get started or pick things back up on these projects?
We've seen a variety of things. I think assuming the projects come back to life, the pipeline for supply chain, for workforce to go build the work, depending on what part of the country you are. And I think it's a little bit different everywhere you go. Definitely seen that. We've seen longer lead times with materials. We've seen some contractors who can't come back in full force to where they were pre-COVID. And again, I mean, these are just punches we have to roll with and be candid with our clients that the projects can move forward, but from a cost perspective or a schedule perspective, we need to reevaluate.
Could you speak to any, material systems, lead times? We just wrote a piece about lumber prices being through the roof, and there's really no end in sight as far as those inflated prices because of the wildfires and supply issues related to COVID. Are you being impacted in any specific areas as a major construction firm?
Yeah, I think fortunately we found that companies, especially suppliers, have been burning off their inventory. But again, I think that inventory is going to start to wane here in the near future. And if the raw material providers can't get their engine up and running again, you will definitely see gaps start to emerge.
Mm-hmm. And then construction pipelines, I think ABC had the average pipeline at like 7.9 months, which is still, holding steady. What are you guys looking at as a firm? What are you seeing amongst, competitive firms or your peers in the industry? Is that healthy? I mean, what are you guys kind of sort of forecasting for second half of this year and in 2021? Is the pipeline going to start to shrink a little bit or what?
I think it will be. I guess what we've seen in the short term as we've kind of come out of the first wave of COVID is we've seen owners try to rapidly kickstart projects that were really just getting going. in the late winter and early spring. And so I'm not willing to say that that's a trend yet, especially with the fall approaching. But definitely there is. There's some. I guess you could call it impatience to let's get these projects moving. What can we do to speed up, get in under the wire of another wave of illness sweeping the country. Again, I think the reality of it though is going to be is you can only speed up so much. Realistically, I would expect some of these projects, depending on how the fall goes, to have to stretch out. And again, I think just from a productivity factor in executing the work, with the steps contractors are going to have to take to build these jobs safely and take the health of their workforce into consideration, that it's just going to naturally stretch overall timelines out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned, the safety of the workforce, job site concerns, and we've talked about this months ago. And how are things going? We talked to Robbins and Morton, I think in the very first episode of the weekly, about steps they were taking to ensure safety on the job sites. Do you guys feel good about where things are with your job sites? You talk about liability issues, contract issues. It could get really messy when working with the trades, on these major projects. How are things going as far as the job site measures go?
So, I guess I'll knock on wood as I say this. My division's been fortunate that we have managed to keep COVID off our job sites since the spring, and I think that's been good. I will say, unfortunately, a couple of the other divisions within our group haven't been so fortunate. Mm-hmm. And with contract tracing and everything else, one exposure leads to multiple people quarantined for periods of time, and definitely have caused delays. I think it's going to be interesting as all this moves forward. I know we've already seen contract language changing with our owners as far as risk sharing when it comes to pandemic-related liabilities, force majeure, and things of that nature. I expect soon enough we'll start seeing some impacts with our insurance partners in how we bond and insure these projects as well. Again, it's tricky. I think that what we've proven, at least with our group, and I know with other companies in the industry that I talk to, is you can work safely on the job site, but you definitely have to take a safety first, not necessarily production first attitude when it comes to that. Because, I think you have to realize you push production at the risk of health of your workforce. One person gets sick, production grinds to a halt. So you have to weigh those on both sides of the coin.
Great. Well, Shawn Buchanan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Best of you at Graycor Southern, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate taking the time out today.